All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
I'm Garret Bergquist, government reporter for Wish TV. It's the end of an era in Indianapolis politics. Jim Brainard, the mayor of Carmel, is retiring at the end of the month after 28 years in office. He's one of the longest-serving mayors of any city in Indiana's history. During that time, Carmel grew from a quiet suburb of 25,000 people to one of the largest cities in Indiana at more than 100,000 people. Brainard's tenure was marked by large-scale infrastructure projects and by a number of environmental initiatives. I sat down with him to talk about his time in office. Joining us now is Carmel Mayor Jim Brainard. Mayor, thank you for letting us drop by.
Well, it's great to be here with you.
So, after 28 years in office, how does it feel to be going into your final month?
Well, it's been the honor of a lifetime to be able to work with the people in Carmel to help, in essence, build a brand new city. The thing I'll miss the most, I think, at this point, though, is people that I work with every day. We've got the best staff ever here at the city, and I'll miss seeing those people every day.
So there's a whole generation of voters now who have never known any other mayor of Carmel. What got you into politics in the first place?
Well, I was raising my family here, and I thought that I could make a difference. I had talked to a lot of my friends, and they suggested that I stand for this position. I never thought I would do it for 28 years. I had a goal of getting reelected once and doing it for 8 years. But we were always in the middle of a big project, and we also had a lot of people on our staff that had left better paying private jobs because they believed in what we were doing. We were doing innovative, creative things here. And so I always felt obligated. And we were having fun. We were getting to build this brand new city. And so I kept doing it.
You talk about building the city. When you took office, Carmel's population was about 25,000. Now it's over 100,000. Tell me what it was like managing that growth.
Well, it takes a lot of money. 1 mile of two-lane road cost about $12 million today. We had to build new roads, new storm sewers, new sanitary sewers, expand the water system, make the transportation system safe and efficient. Getting that infrastructure in place is so important. And then we also had park infrastructure. When I became mayor, the city only was managing 20-some acres of parkland. They owned about 40 and turned half of it over to the county to manage. Today, we have over 1,000 acres of parkland, about 230-some miles of bike trail. We had none when I started. So getting these things in place to make us a competitive city was really important. In some ways, we had a great public school system, a good public library, and a lot of nice housing subdivisions. But we really didn't have a downtown. We didn't have a center. And that's what people told me they wanted in that first campaign back in 1995. And so we worked really hard in figuring out what the legal and financial hurdles were to building a traditional, walkable, pedestrian downtown.
What are some things that surrounding cities can learn from the way Carmel manages growth, cities like Westfield or Brownsburg?
Well, I think they have to be willing to invest in infrastructure, first of all. No one wants to live in a place that doesn't have good streets, good water system, good sanitary sewer system, a good park system. All these things need to be prioritized and in place. You have to spend money to be able to do that. But if you do it, you'll attract growth, and therefore the tax rates will stay low. Cities are either improving or they're declining. There's really nothing in between. And so it's important to keep investing, smart investments, but keep investing in the place that you've chosen to call home.
traffic circles might be the most visible mark you've left on Carmel. You got that idea from Europe?
I saw the roundabouts when I was in grad school in England. And, I knew nothing about civil engineering. I was a lawyer by training and studied history and communication as an undergrad. But I saw these things in England. I thought they work better. And so number one, we haven't had to increase the lanes. So many times engineers, to solve a congestion problem, they just add lanes, and all they're doing is building a bigger parking lot to get more cars through the green cycle of the lot, or the light, rather. But safety is the major reason we do it. Our fatality rate per 100,000 per year is 2 per 100,000. The national average is 12 per 100,000. Many of our neighboring communities in Indiana are much higher, 15, 20 fatalities per 100,000 per year. So it's all about speed. Human error rate doesn't change that much, but everyone has to slow down at the roundabout. And as a result, when human error kicks in, the injuries and fatalities are much, much less. And one of the other things we've tried to work at, especially in central Carmel, is getting back to a grid system. We used to build our streets every 400 to 500 feet, so they're pedestrian friendly. You had options if one street's closed, there's another one not too far away. But then the suburbs tended to use the old county road grid system, which is one every 5,000, 280 feet. So getting back to that grid system has been really important for our transportation system, making sure our neighborhoods are connected from neighborhood to neighborhood, reducing congestion on the main streets.
Have those traffic circles been worth the investment?
They've absolutely been worth the investment. We know that based on national averages, we're saving at least 10 lives per year. We don't know who those people are, but those lives are saved. We know that much better for the environment. Millions of tons of carbon has not been emitted because they're so much more environmentally friendly. Cars aren't sitting idling at the stoplight. Then there's the time. I've had so many people in the city saying, you gave me back 45 minutes in my daily commute to and from work, not sitting at stoplights because they flow so much better. And that's an incalculable sort of savings. But the roundabouts have worked really well for us. I think the key is that we tend to be parochial here in the Midwestern part of the United States. We need to get out and always be looking for best practices across the globe because our competition today is global. We're not competing against another city in Indiana. We're competing against cities in China and Europe and South America. And we have to understand what the best practices are across the globe. We don't have any mountains and oceans here in central Indiana, and we have lousy weather some days. And so we have to work so much harder on the built environment to be competitive. I always joke, we're just like Paris, France. They have lousy weather and no mountains and no oceans. They build a beautiful city. We can do the same thing here.
How have the Keystone Expressway and US 31 worked? Have those worked out the way you'd hoped?
Keystone has been a huge success for us. It was a state road up until 2007. I negotiated with Governor Mitch Daniels for it to become a city road in perpetuity. And we got a big check, close to $100 million check to redo that road. The state Department of Transportation was going to add lanes, and we knew that wasn't the answer. We knew we had to separate the grade. And by doing it with the peanut-shaped roundabout interchanges, we only had to take 3 houses. Had we put in tight diamond interchanges with stoplights on that road, we had to take 46 houses. It was an expensive project, but much less expensive than putting in these tight diamond interchanges that you would see along the interstate. So Keystone has been a huge success. We were averaging at least 2 fatalities a year on Keystone, and that's gone down to 1 or 2 fatalities every 10 years at this point. So it's much, much safer. Pedestrians can cross it. It used to be like the Great Wall of China that divided the east side of Carmel from the central portion. 31 is still a state road. We got most of what we asked the state to do on 31 because they saw how successful Keystone had been when we took it over. There's some things we would have done slightly differently had we had control over 31, but overall, it's an improvement.
Tell me about your decision to pursue a number of environmental initiatives as the city government. Why was that important?
Well, I haven't met anybody yet of either political party that wants their family to drink dirty water or breathe dirty air. This is our environment. This is where we live. And we all have a duty to leave this earth in a better place than we found it. And that's a nonpartisan sort of issue. And so it's been something that's been very near and dear to me for many years, is that when we develop, as we build this new city, we have to do so in an environmentally sustainable way that leaves the place better than we found it. And I think we've done that in Carmel. We know that our mixed-use development in the center core, somebody living in this center part of Carmel, drives a fraction of people who live in the more distant areas drive, so it's better for the environment. We know that our urban parks and green space expansion, our bike trails, all allow people to not only be healthier, but to do things that are better for the environment as they move around the community as well, too.
Are you surprised by the extent to which this has somewhat put you at odds with the National Republican Party?
Well, I'm disappointed. You know, the Republican Party has a tremendous history of work for the environment. It was Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, who set aside most of our national park land. It was President Eisenhower in the 1950s, a Republican, who set up the Arctic Reserve. It was the Nixon and Ford administrations, both Republicans, who set up the Environmental Protection Agency, our first environmental federal agency focused on the environment. The Clean Water Drinking Amendment Acts, the first ones with some teeth. The Endangered Species Act, and probably a dozen more environmentally important initiatives that became law. It was the Reagan administration that, with Margaret Thatcher from England as Prime Minister, went when we had the ozone hole in the southern hemisphere. Went to Montreal and led the world in signing the Montreal Protocol, so that we didn't have an ozone hole in the northern hemisphere, which would have caused huge increases in the amount of cancers and other problems. And it was the George H. Bush administration that set up the system where we started to keep track of environmental data year after year after year, environmental surveys. And so the Republican Party traditionally has, taking care of the earth and making sure that we live in healthy places has been a nonpartisan issue. And it disappoints me that the Republican Party, some in the Republican Party, have moved away from that.
You took office at a time when politics was becoming more divisive and more nationalized, but didn't have nearly the extent of division or nationalization that it does today. How do we reverse that trend? And what was it like for you to watch that unfold?
It was disappointing. We have tried something in this country that is different and unique. We're the first republic in a couple thousand years when we signed our Constitution back in the late 1700s. And most of the leaders in Europe and other places of the world kind of chuckled and said, this will never work. And for it to work, we have to pay attention to what our founders said back then. And they said there has to be civil discussion. There has to be free speech, but we have to be civil about it. We can't demonize the other side simply because they have a different idea about how to make the country better. And we need to get back to that, where we can sit down and talk about the best way to proceed. We can disagree. I disagree with people on the city council and people in the state house all the time about things, but yet we try to do so in a way that's civil and respectful. And that's what disappoints me. There's too much money, quite honestly, in the federal system. There's a whole class of people that make their living today on keeping people angry with the other side. We need to move away from that, take a close look at making, how that money gets to these various organizations that keep everybody so polarized, and maybe get rid of some of the tax deductions for those contributions. But we need to get back to a civil discussion. That's what made this country what it is, and I'm afraid we're going to lose that if we don't focus on it.
We've talked a lot about some of your accomplishments during your tenure. Out of all of those, what is the one thing you're most proud of?
Well, I think the downtown is evidenced in the Palladium as the anchor to our new downtown. That was a big lift for a city Carmel size. When we started building that building, we were about 60,000 people, and it's one of 15 or so true concert halls in the United States and as good as any of them. Indianapolis had put very successfully based a lot of their economic development on amateur and professional sports development. And I saw there had been an underinvestment in art venues and art facilities. And I thought this is a niche that we can fill without direct competition with our neighbors. And it's worked out very well for us. The two small theaters and the concert hall bring in tens of millions of dollars per year in economic development. Our markets, both the winter holiday market, the Christkindle Market, and the summer farmers market there in our new downtown center. The Christkindle Market brings in twice as many visitors per year as the Indianapolis 500 now. And so this is good for our small businesses, for those restaurants and small boutiques, locally owned businesses that are trying to succeed in our downtown area. As we look around the United States, we don't see many successful downtowns in cities our size, particularly the older downtowns. But in Carmel, we have a thriving downtown. A lot of it is because the events and our economic development strategy has paid off.
What's one thing that you wish you could have gotten done or done different?
Oh, I have a whole list of things that I would have liked to have seen happen that didn't. At one point, we wanted to build a large lake on the south side as water drains from north to south in Carmel and make a big park around it. We couldn't find the land. It was too along 96th Street where everything drains. We were too far along in our development in the late 90s to do that. That's one of my regrets. I wanted to build an Eagle Creek type facility. We've looked at many other projects over the years. Some have worked and most have gone forward, but there's a few that haven't. And I regret some of those that haven't. I wish I'd been more aggressive. I think earlier on we could have gotten more done. But we did do a lot in Carmel. So overall, I'm happy with the results.
Now, Carmel did face several racial profiling lawsuits over your time as mayor, and historically it has had a bit of a reputation for hostility toward black Hoosiers. What should the city do to address this in the years going forward?
Well, we started to address it in 1996. The first year I was mayor. As a result of some actions taken right before I took office, we faced a racial discrimination lawsuit, which is probably a justified lawsuit. We settled that case, worked with the NAACP and the Urban League, and made changes to our policies in Carmel. And I think those would be our police department today is far more diverse than the city. Today, Carmel is 25% non-white, welcomes people from every race, background, religion, place of origin, and I'm proud of that. It's reputation of some of these problems goes back 30 and 40 and 50 years. It's hard to move past, but we've done that in this city. And the data shows that.
What's next for you?
Well, I'm going to have a lot of fun. I'm working on a book for Indiana University Press. Several projects in the works. I'll be able to talk more about those things after I turn over the keys on December 31st.
What advice do you have for all the mayors that are going to take office on January 1st?
Work hard, read everything you can about city planning. Mayors are really the city planner in chief. And there's all sorts of great academic literature and resources out there that, I talk to some of the academics that work on these books, and they find out I actually read their book, they get excited. But you've got to read and read and read and become an expert on city planning and city development. And that's probably the most important thing to do as mayor.
And building off of that, what advice do you have for anybody who's interested in public service or even just becoming more civically engaged?
Well, do it for the right reasons. Don't do it to see your name in print, because some days that won't be positive. Do it because you care about the place you've chosen to live, the place you've chosen to raise your family and start your business. Do it to make your little part of the world better. If you do it for those reasons, you'll have a positive impact.
Mayor Jim Brainard, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
That was Carmel Mayor Jim Brainard. His last day in office will be December 31st. I'm Garret Bergquist. Thanks for listening.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.